I'm going to try to keep my bit as minimal as possible. We're going to be, I don't need to do an introduction for Scott because hopefully everyone knows who this legend is. But we're going to be chatting about the, the process of the reflecting and really diving back into that sort of training throughout the year. So reflecting on the previous year, getting those challenges or those goals set, and then really cracking on for the rest of that year. Because I think, especially in these tough times, it's more important than ever. But I've got questions that I'm going to chuck at Scott about this. There will be some time for some different questions at the end, but feel free if you want to chuck some questions in the chat that you want to know a bit more about something that he said or some examples. Feel free to do that. And we've got like 38 people in the chat, so feel free to dive in. But Scott, we'll dive in if you're ready.
Yep, I'm ready. I'm waiting for you all.
Awesome, cool. So first question. So I've just written down the start of the year usually means coaches and gymnasts going through a bit of a process of evaluation from the previous year and then going for the next year. Just want to sort of firstly, what value do you put on this process, and maybe how has that value changed over your years of experience at the top end, or elite level and all levels?
Well, I mean, number one, it's extremely valuable. There's absolutely no getting away from it. You know, to reflect and to plan and to sort of reset just at the end of the year or at the beginning of the next year is absolutely essential. But I can't stress enough that you have to do that, you know, with your targets in mind. So, for example, right now, it should be a really, really broad open planning with a wide open mind. I should be looking at so many things. But as you all know, the Olympics was cancelled. So I've had to keep that specific mindset for another year. So it's still quite specific, but it's with little bits of extra challenges chucked in there. And it's very important to reflect continuously whilst you're doing that, because at the end of the day, you've got to think of the athletes' mindsets as well. And right now, there's a big challenge with all of the guys, and that is, as a lot of you will know, that coming into a major championships, one of the key aspects is consistency. And it's very, very difficult to keep a real consistent approach for a long, long period of time. So what I like to do, say several months before a major event, is just mix things up a little bit, keep everybody on their toes. And then, you know, as we approach the final months before preparation, things become very consistent, very regimented. And that's how you learn. That's how you look at each little part of it, and you can learn and you can see what's going right and what's going wrong. If you're up and down all the time, you can't always monitor the things that are working and the things that aren't. So, of course, at this sort of time last year, we began that process of really, really becoming methodical and keeping things, you know, very regimented, with a view that it would be over in about 6 months. But of course, here we are. A year later, and I'm having to try and keep that consistency, because every single time we've got back into something and worked towards like a trial or a competition, the goalpost has changed. So that's been another big challenge on here. But absolutely reflecting and making sure that you're ready for the year ahead, and just taking the time to think about all of the challenges that you might have faced, all of the successes that you might have had, and trying to take the positives out of all of them before moving forward is absolutely essential, Mark. So yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, cool. A meaty answer, of which we'll dive one bit that we spoke about just before we got into this. But one thing that obviously the guys that you've been working with, obviously you said there that last January would have been 6 months and you're done. How has it been to did you have the same conversation 2 Januaries in a row, or did you tailor it or change it slightly? Because now you've got, well, hopefully Tokyo's happening in 6-7 months time. So how's that gone, and how have you managed that sort of process?
That's quite an interesting question, because there are aspects almost identical of the conversations I had this January. Obviously, there was lots of different things as well, as you can imagine. And it was only sort of the March sort of time last year that we wasn't even in the gym. No one was allowed to go near a gym. So, you know, there's been lots of challenges. But yeah, I think the bulk of the conversations were very similar, but it was more, you know, now we need to get back into that mindset. Now we need, you know, and Max, for example, actually had a period of time off completely last year, because he had to feel like he was having that break before, like he would have done a year prior. So that was good. Whereas the other guys, they wanted to keep going. Some of them actually struggled a lot with the lockdown, and it's taken a lot. In fact, it's one of the Welsh gymnasts, the newly Welsh gymnast, Bryn. He took it quite the lockdown quite negatively, and it's taken several months. But I'm really pleased to say he's on top form again, and I'm really excited for him to go and do these trials, and hopefully he can push towards that Olympic selection as well. So the conversations have been similar, but with a few different angles to them.
Oh, fantastic. And the challenging bit about this chat is I now want to ask you questions about how you manage lockdown and how you manage motivation levels with all these individuals. But I'm going to stay true to the topic. One bit you said there, well, how has it changed over years? And so in terms of like your thoughts on this beginning of year reflection and planning, how has that changed over years? Because I know when we've had previous chats with people like Martin Laws and Sue Lawton, that they're like with their coaching philosophy, it sort of changed from early days to where it is now. But has it always been the same sort of process you've gone through, or have you learned some stuff along the ways? Has it molded or developed in any way?
Well, one thing that stayed very, really consistent is after your small break. I mean, as you know, in gymnastics, you don't have too long off, but one of the times you always have off normally is over Christmas. Apart from the test event in 2011 or 2012, whenever it was, we didn't have any time off over Christmas. But apart from that, and what that does, it actually really, really gives you a lot of motivation. So that's something I recognise, and I actually wrote into our plan, because motivation is a huge tool. And quite often at the end of a year, it's not just in sport, but in life, you become a little bit demotivated. You get excited for Christmas, but really you've had enough of your work, you've had enough of everything, you've spent all your money, you're probably about 3 stone overweight, and your motivation drops. And then you come to January after a little break and boom, you're on it. You want to join the gym, you want to get, and it's the same sort of feeling in the gym with the athletes. So I always use that to my advantage. And that's when we talk about inspirational targets and what are we going to achieve. And of course, at the beginning of a cycle, it's really broad, it's exciting, it's real reach for the sky targets. And each year that goes by in an Olympic cycle, those targets become a little bit more specific to what you want to achieve at your major championships. And of course, that's different as well with the different athletes. So if you're working with juniors, of course, every year it's about, what we're going to achieve, what we're going to do, how we're going to motivate. Because everything I do, I started off my career as believing that I had to be the one that told the kids what to do, and I had to be, the leader, the dictator. And I've realised over time that actually you can get so much more through inspirational leadership and motivational leadership. And if you throw a lot of empathy in there, the kids, they warm to you and they want to listen rather than telling them. So I use that a lot as well, but I have to reflect all the time on that, because sometimes what you say doesn't work, sometimes it works and you don't even realize it's going to work. So just taking all those things on board is absolutely key.
Cool. And I agree. And again, I want to go now talk about motivation, but one thing I'll dive into here was, when did you make that transition from yearly cycles to 4 yearly cycles, and how does that look? Because I love the fact that, like, obviously you work in Olympic cycles now, yeah. So, but when did you make that transition, and how does that look? Because doing a year plan is is challenging, but then trying to do a 4-year plan, wait for the code of points to come out, and then try to guess where the direction's going. When did you do that transition from 1 to 4, and how does that look in terms of doing a 4-year plan?
Yeah, well, to answer the first part, it's mainly when they become seniors, but also at that level of being a senior. You can't just say, all right, you're a senior now, I'm now going to plan for the Olympics. You have to have realistic goals, and you have to have, they have to be ambitious, because that's what's going to motivate you, but not silly. You can't go silly. You've got to be realistic. And if there was a realistic chance of being part of an Olympic cycle and getting to Olympic, and even if it wasn't to the Olympics, it was part of a World Championships or a European or a Commonwealth, you've got to look at all of those different planners along the journey. So really, when they become seniors, around sort of 17, 18 years old, you'd start to look in bigger blocks. Of course, when they're juniors, you have your long-term goals, which, of course, when you start, is getting them to be in national squad, and then above that, going to the international, and ultimately, you want them to go to the Olympic Games. but there's so many hurdles and so many small targets that you have to achieve on the way, as with a junior gymnast. And of course, you never really know, no matter how talented they are, if they're going to reach that target. So the targets and the plans must be a lot shorter and a lot more punchy as well. There's no point in saying to a 14-year-old or a 12-year-old, oh, right, in 7 years' time, like, it's gone. It's a waste of time. It's good for you to have those plans and those thoughts, but for them, it's like, okay, what are we going to do tomorrow? Tomorrow we're going to go, do X, Y, and Z, and this is how we're going to do it, and actually do a week's plan, a month's plan. You can always do your competition phase plans as well. So they're normally, within 6 or 7 months. And then I base every single thing around a competition build-up. And my competition build-ups are all based around 8 weeks if it's a first competition, and then around 6 weeks for once you're in competition fitness. But of course, that depends on where the comps fall. So if there's one and there's one 2 weeks after or a week after, of course, you adapt that continuously. And I think they're the two other things that are essential to me, is being able to adapt to the situations continuously, because and obviously adopt what you've learned. But for me, like I said, you've got to keep things as simple as you possibly can, because if you overcomplicate things, you then lose sight of what you're trying to do, and you're focusing too much on your plan. And it's to keep your targets as the main thing, not your plan, because if you're focusing too much on this amazing plan that you've made, you can lose sight of the target. Whereas if you're only focusing on the target, your plan will naturally come into play, and your adaptation will naturally happen along the way, because you'll be focusing on achieving your target rather than what you set out on your paper, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, cool. And I think you've got to adapt, because you might set within a plan and someone might learn that skill, achieve it a bit earlier than you thought they would. So then you've got to go back to it. But having a thought on that target, I think I agree with. And in terms of inspirational targets, has there been like an example where you've put out, I'm going to go super ambitious here. You put out an ambitious target and then someone's absolutely smashed it, and you weren't expecting to, and then you've had to go back to the drawing board again? Or have you got any examples of that from your time?
Well, yeah. I mean, if I'm honest, there was some of my targets. I can remember two. First target. Well, I can remember lots, but two big ones. Was I really felt that Max could make the 2012 Olympic team. Nobody else really did. He was very young. He hadn't been to hardly any major competitions. So that was very ambitious. But we was both very realistic with it, and we spoke a lot about not achieving it. We're going to go for it. We're going to give it our all. Sorry. Yeah, we're going to give it our all. We're going to try everything that we can to achieve. But if we don't, it's not the end of the world. And the other one was directly after 2012. I actually set a plan, and this is the God's honest truth. A lot of people don't believe it, but I set a plan that I felt that Max could be part of winning a medal on floor, a medal on pommel, medal on floor, in the all-around, and helping the team to win a medal. And I sat down and spoke to the performance director back then, and the head national coach. And of course, the first thing that they said was, these are ambitious targets. I think that you're probably aiming too high. Maybe aim for one medal. Maybe aim for just a pommel medal. And I said, no, I truly believe that this is what is possible. And, as long as we've got the realistic approaches and we can adapt those mindsets, I think it's very possible. And you've got to aim that high, because otherwise, what's the point? And I kid you not, one of them actually laughed in my face, literally laughed at me. And I was so angry back then and disappointed and everything else. But looking back, that was probably one of the catalysts that really drove me to make sure that I did everything I could. Obviously, I'm not the competitor, so I'm not the one that won the medal, but drove me to make sure that I did everything I could to achieve those targets. So yeah, there's two examples of ambitious targets that worked. But of course, I can give examples of ambitious targets that didn't work, that actually had quite a detrimental effect as well. So you've got to be very careful. If you set a target that's too high, it can really create a lot of demotivation as well. And it's quite easy as a coach to look at someone and think, oh yeah, you can achieve this, let's go. it's quite hard to get that balance right.
No, I agree, and I think it is. It's a delicate act. If you get that wrong, what can the implications be long term? Could the impact on trust? Could impact on X, Y, and Z? And it could be a case they might get injured because of something that you've suggested. Quick question to you: when you sat down and you thought you made that 4-year plan, and you came up with that a medal on floor, a medal on pummel, individual. Did you start to question yourself at one point and go, is this too ambitious? Or did you?
I'll give you an example. So we went to the World Championships the European Championships that year in Russia. And Max did really well. He won a medal on pommel, won a medal on floor, won a medal in the all-around. And it was like, oh, wow, I can do this. So, of course, my chest comes out, my ego comes out, which is much more in check now, I have to say. And I start saying things like, yeah, we can do this. And people are saying, well, that was the Europeans, and I'm like, no. And of course, we go to the World Championships, and it was a very different story. So the first Worlds, we missed out on floor, and the all-around, we made the all-around final, but only won a medal on pommel. Mm-hmm. And then the next year was the Commonwealths, where he did exceptionally well again. So, of course, I get a bit excited. I'm trying to learn from my mistakes, but I still got a bit excited. But what I didn't realise I was doing was also putting pressure on him. So it's important that I was learning on what I was doing as well as what he was learning. And, I can look back now, and he went to China and he made no finals, nothing, 0. So, yeah, I really questioned myself. And I remember thinking at that point, oh, have I really overestimated this and everything? Can we not deal with the pressure? And then he got an opportunity because Niall Wilson got an injury, and he went out and he became second in the world in the all-around. So by now he'd won a medal on pommel and he'd won a medal in the all-around, but we really wanted that medal on floor as well to sort of do all the bits and pieces together. But by this time, I was a lot quieter and a lot more like, let's just trust the process here rather than getting excited each time he does well. Max was a lot more experienced. And whilst I can look back and say about those mistakes and wish maybe that had never happened, they were essential learning points. And if I hadn't have done those things, I would never have learned. And I would never be able to sit here in front of people like yourselves and tell those stories, because if I didn't learn, I would still be where I was back when I started. So then we moved on to the final Worlds, which was in Glasgow, where we won a team medal, we won a floor medal, we won a pommel medal, but he got 4th in the all-round. So we're getting closer and closer. And then, of course, in Rio, he won a floor medal, pommel medal, and an all-around medal, but we missed out on the team medal. But I think for the individual, we achieved everything that we set out to do. And yes, to answer your question in a short way, there were lots of moments where I did doubt myself, but I had to trust the process.
No, I agree. And it must be challenging because, like, the bit you said there about learning from some of these events, I'm not sure what happens when you get to that level, but I don't know how many opportunities you get to have discussions and talks with people to prepare you for that. Because if you could go back and tell a Scott of 10 years ago, okay, when you get to that point, don't get excited. Just go trust the process and go through it. But yeah, no, it sounds fantastic. Or those experiences there. Question there. How do you vary the process you go through then? Because before we came on, it sounds like you work with a number of individuals. Do you change the sort of process that you go through with each of them? Because I know it's always learner focus, individuals, but what different tools you have to use with different people?
Well, the short answer is 100% yes. You have to be individual with every single person that you work with, not just your athletes. Mm-hmm. Every single person, the support staff, the coaching staff, the parents. You have to have your general rules. So you have to have your general program. You have to have your outline of what you're trying to do. And then you have to have your core values and your core beliefs within that. And then, of course, you have to have your rules, if you like, for your environment and for your culture. And once you've got all of those in place, you have to follow those and trust that and keep working on that. But within that circle of everything I just said, that's where, if you get that bit right, the magic happens. And the magic is all individual. Everything is individual. And I talk to every single one of my guys completely differently. Bryn, I'm continuously next to him. I'm continuously talking to him. I'm continuously helping him, encouraging him, working with him. Sometimes, Max, I'll come in the gym, I'll say, how you doing? And he'll get on with it. He'll call me for a routine. I'll have a chat, and that will be it. There'll be no coaching. Sometimes there's a lot of emotional trauma that I have to deal with. Sometimes I don't even speak to the guys at all. It's just about setting a few targets, and you've got to be able to do that. And of course, you've got the different types of staff. So you've got coaches in the gym that are very, I don't know if you guys have done the, what's it called, where you've got the red, the green, the blue, and the yellow personalities and stuff. And if you've got like 2 reds in the gym, you've got to be really ready for the conflict and everything else, but also accept it, because it's good. It's what you need in an environment. You need challenges like that. And as long as you've got your core values and your core beliefs in place, so people know the boundaries and what they're able to say and what they're not able to say, it's okay to have those confrontational discussions. But also, if you've got a good planner, if you've got a good thinker, use those people, bring them all in. And actually, if you can use the team around you to support the individual, you've literally nailed it. There was a time when I believed, I know everything. I don't need anyone's help. I'm not interested. Looking back, I reflect and I think there are so many people that were so important to that journey, even down to the fact that I was trying to run the gym whilst doing the coaching. Right? It's quite a unique situation. And things like stressing, like, having your maintenance manager on site, so that when the vault does break, you haven't got to start fretting in your head thinking, oh my God, I've got to go and sort the vault out, but he's about to do a pommel routine and I've got to get the vault fixed before he gets the vault. I've only got rings and stuff like that. And looking back, it's like I had a lot of support. And it's absolutely essential. So I've probably gone completely off topic there, miles off. But you'll have to stop me and say, just calm down with your.
You keep chatting. You're not. What you're saying is interesting. So it's all good. Question I had for you then. What happened? So in those discussions that you have at the beginning of the year, have you ever been in a moment? Because one thing that does turn up occasionally, well, sometimes, is having challenging conversations with people. So when I say challenging, like if you're talking about, okay, reflecting on how last year went, and maybe they're reflecting on a different year that you didn't see, or planning ahead and trying to make sure that you're keeping people on the straight and narrow. How have you had experience of dealing with those sort of conversations, or what would you suggest if you were having to have those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, to be a bit more specific, are you asking things like, maybe one athlete's achieving a little bit higher and the other athlete, maybe that's training alongside, wants to be doing the same things, but actually they need to have a slightly different plan, but you have to have a delicate conversation, because that can come across as quite negative. So yeah, all the time, day in, day out, and not necessarily with my athletes anymore. They know me very well. They know me inside out. I know them. But certainly with a lot of the other members within the gym, it's quite difficult. And it's normally when they're younger. Quite often it's the girls in the gym. It's not the girls, it's the parents. They're quite protective. So it's like, well, hang on, if this person's getting this opportunity, why aren't I? And there's a lot of belief as well out there that is crazy, that is still there, that you can take anybody. If you give everybody the same opportunity, everybody could be a world champion. And it's like, well, no, you've got to be able to have those conversations with people that are very difficult at times. And you've got to have them in a way to keep them motivated. There's a lot of people that can have them because they're not scared and they're not worried. But what they don't realise is they're destroying people's lives and confidence as they're having the conversation, just because they're being very blunt. And no, sorry, they're never going to achieve that. They become offended because someone's questioning their ability, and no, people aren't questioning your ability. They're questioning, they're trying to support their child. And if you can look through that and have good, positive conversations with everybody, 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, you can have a positive outcome. But again, even those skills have taken years and years and years to develop, because normally you get offended. Someone questions you. So, well, hang on, I'm doing my best. I'm in here every day. I'm a coach. I don't have any holiday. I don't have any time off. Why are you questioning me? So yeah, if you can try and look past the initial conversation and always have that empathy at the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real positive.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think a nice segue into what you just said there is obviously it is not just the coach and the performer. So sometimes, or a lot of times, especially with the younger lot, you've got to work with their guardians or the parents, or so it's that triad of individuals. Have you had any interesting conversations, because having them on board as well is imperative? But have you? I can imagine you've had a lot of positive conversations, but I can imagine you've also had some challenging ones as well.
Well, it's interesting. When I was younger, yeah, I had a lot of challenging conversations, but I believe they were challenging because I let them be challenging. And I almost, two things. I tried to tell the athletes that were talented that they're very talented, and told the parents, oh, they're very talented, which made a rod for my own back instantly. And because not that you shouldn't encourage them, but there's, you don't know what's around the corner. It doesn't matter how good they are. You don't know what's there in 5 years, 10 years. And if you really build someone up, and then all of a sudden you feel you find yourself in a situation where you've got to move them down a group because they're just not achieving, you've almost got to backtrack on everything you've said. So it's better just to keep things consistent, keep open, very open, be transparent. I think that's really, really key. Transparency. At the end of the day, if you're trying to hide something, or if you're worried about saying something, 9 times out of 10, you probably shouldn't be doing what you're trying to hide. So transparency is really, really important. And just work with the parents and listen to what they're saying. I'm working at the moment with a really great organisation called Working with Parents in Sport. It's a guy called Gordon, and he's done a lot of research on this. And I'm, for the first time, really, I'm actually trying to do a whole program that involves all of our parents, and I'm really confident that it's going to help. And this is coming from someone when I started coaching was like, no, parents, they're the problem, keep them away. But now, no, it's not. They're the answer. Parents, are essential. And of course, you noticed I did say 9.5 out of 10. There is always a
0.5. There's always a half. There's always a half. No, and fantastic. And I can imagine. Well, if the parents are on board, fantastic. And in terms of that program you're talking about, that sounds quite interesting as well. So I think quite sure a number of people might be diving. So that was Working with Parents in Sport, was it?
Yeah. I've done a lot of tweets. I've done a few little podcasts with them as well. I know that he's done a lot of podcasts with a lot of high profile sportsmen and sports coaches, sportsmen and women sports coaches. So just look it up. It's literally Working with Parents in Sport. If anyone wants to contact as well, I'd be more than happy, because we're designing a program for gymnastics at the moment as we speak. I think he also did a part of the that's it. Part of the whatever you call it, British Gymnastics as well recently. I think he did a bit of a talk there. So
awesome. Tom's just posted it in the chat, so get on there and have a little follow. Awesome. One thing I just wanted to touch upon, Scott, we've spoken about how you deal with, like, in terms of review the previous year with your performers. How do you do it with yourself? What does that look like in terms of you as reflecting on your previous year? What do you focus on, and how do you sort of set your goals for the next year?
Yeah, well, something I've always been naturally quite good at, even as a youngster, was self-reflecting. So even like if I'd done something I knew that needed improvement, or I wasn't happy with, I would probably really beat myself up over it until I was able to put it right, if that makes sense. So self-reflection is really important, but also taking the time. I never gave myself any time to recover. As athletes, you always talk about recovery, rest, essential. As coaches, is probably more important, because your brain works at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So now I do give myself time, and I realized that I think there was an element of, I didn't want to let anyone down by having time off, especially not the athletes. But actually, you're letting them down by not giving yourself that time. And I don't mean just any time. You've still got to be very careful of when you plan this time, and make sure that it's a time that's going to really suit the program. But if there is a period where the guys can train, they can do a bit of relaxed training, get another coach in, take that time to recharge your energy and recharge your batteries. And you'll find naturally you start to, positively think, because at times, it would be wrong of me to say that I wasn't quite anxious at times about the amount that I had to do or the amount that I had to think about. And you know what it's like, sometimes late at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, you can't sleep, you've got a million things going in your head, you go to bed, you eventually sleep, you wake up in the morning and it's like, what was I even worried about? I've got to do X, Y, and Z, let's deal with the day. And I found myself doing that more and more and more as I approached Rio. And I think, a lot of that was probably subconscious anxiety around it, but also I was spending so much time away from home and the gym that when I got home, I was spending a lot of time in the gym to almost justify what I was doing, which is ridiculous because I'm the boss of the gym. But it was like, what am I doing? And of course, the only person or people that I was really leaving out was my wife and kids. And of course, that was causing me a lot of stress as well, because then I'm thinking, well, why am I leaving there? And it's a vicious circle. And the only thing that can really resolve that is taking the time yourself to look and reflect and recharging your batteries.
Oh, I agree. I don't think you realize how much you need it until you've had it. But as a workaholic myself, and I imagine a lot of people in the same call, you'll keep going. And then when you do have a week off, you then realize, oh crap, I did need that. So it's great to hear you saying that, my friend. In terms of like your year, then what's your focuses for this year? Then do you set yourself targets in terms of personal stuff, within the gym stuff, the business stuff, learning targets or anything like that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. I like to better myself all the time. One of the key things, that I pride myself on is self-learning. But I don't mean just self-learning, like educating myself. And that doesn't, I'm not an academic. I never, there's no point in pretending I am, but it doesn't mean that I can't learn so many more life skills all of the time. And something that I realize at the moment is how much you can learn from other people just by having conversations. So that's really, really key. So I like to set myself small targets. Yes, I'm very proud of what I've achieved, but something I'm really, really passionate about is mentoring and giving back. And yes, there's work involved in that and there's work opportunities. I just like it. I like hence being here with you guys now. I like talking about my experiences, and 9 times out of 10, someone can get something, even if it's, well, actually, I don't want to do what he's done there. That's still a learning moment, because I talk about people that have had big influences in my life, and some of them in particular have had massive influences in my life because I've looked at them and thought, I'm never going to do that. You know what I mean? And that's just as important as people that give you positive influence as well. So, yeah, I always want to better myself. I look at opportunities. In terms of the gym, it can become quite stale, especially when the athletes are at this level. There's not much I need to do. But when something goes wrong, I'm the first person they come to, and it makes me feel valued. It makes me feel needed, necessary, and it also makes me realize how important my role is. There's been times when I thought, maybe they've all the work I've done as with them as juniors, and as young adults, and as their first major comps, maybe they don't need that anymore. Maybe they just need to, when something goes wrong, you're the first person that they really lean on, and you've got to be ready for all the answers, or if you haven't got them, to find the answers.
Fantastic. And it sounds like a great sort of mantra to have about you continue to learn, because I think that's one thing we spoke about in a number of these chats, that unfortunately our education system sort of, you go to school, okay, you're done after that. You do blocks of learning, like to get to the next set of skills you're allowed to learn. You do a qualification and then you're done. You don't have to do anything for the rest of your life. But actually there's a ton of stuff we can go out there and learn. So it's just keeping yourself ticking over. So what's in terms of one of those situations, have you been in a situation where one of the team came to you and you thought, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to go find it and then I'm going to come back? Have you had any of those sort of moments?
Yeah, almost daily, if I'm honest.
Same.
No, it is almost daily, because I now want to give the right advice. Mm-hmm. And of course, it also gives me an opportunity to learn the correct answer, because the best investment you can make, of course, is in yourself. Because if you're better, placed to give answers, then of course you're going to be a better person to be around. But this comes and this stems from my ego as a youngster, as a younger coach, where it was bad. Like if I had to go and ask for help, that was bad. But basically to say, to admit that you're wrong or to admit that you don't know is basically declaring that you're, now going to be wiser, because you're going to go and find that information and you're going to give it. And I realize as well, people respect you so much more if you say those simple words. Right, let's work together now to find the answer and find this. I'm going to go and chat to a few people and I'll get back to you. Rather than come up with some cock and bull story that they can see straight through you. And, I could be the best salesman in the world, but they're like, nah, you ain't got a clue. But when you do get into my position, you've also got to understand that you've got a big responsibility, and you can say things because you've got a lot of influence and people really do listen to you. And if you say something, even if it is half tongue in cheek, people can listen to that. And they can, I think, I was laughing. I've been watching this, Cobra Kai thing. I don't know if any of you have seen it, and that's a good example. The guy is trying to do a good thing for his students, but he keeps getting it wrong. And that's the sort of responsibility you do have as a coach and as a leader.
No, I can imagine. I was going to ask you then, what has been the one moment where you've started talking and you've gone, shit, I shouldn't have said that.
Oh, well, it depends if you're talking about something that, inappropriate, like explicit, do you know what I mean? Or whether you mean I'm trying to give some sort of advice. Several times. I can't really think off the top of my head of an actual real life situation, but it's probably because it happens far too often.
We've all been there, mate. So what was the last, because again, you said about that learning and adding value to yourself. Again, it's quite interesting. Like when I've been on courses before and asked people, how much time have you invested in yourself, or how much money have you spent on yourself in the last year or 2 years, just to better yourself? And when someone looks at you and is like, that's when you know it's a zero. But like doing these chats has been quite good, because actually even through lockdown, the first lockdown, we did it, an hour a week. And for people to invest an hour in a week to listen to other people talk about stuff is a step in the right direction, which is fantastic. Because as you said, we can always learn from other people, which links nicely into a question I had here about your process. What was some key points that you've learned from others in relation to that reflecting and building? What's been like a golden nugget that you've taken off of someone and thought, that's going into my process now?
So I think one of the things I remember thinking and reflecting on it and actually thinking, wow, that is a bit of golden advice, was it's basically communication and feedback. As a coach, you see a million things. Your eye is almost two steps ahead of the game. It doesn't matter what level you are, even if it's recreation. And before the athletes maybe even finish the skill, you've got several bits of information you want to give back to them. But the bit of advice was, you've got to try and choose your key bits of advice and choose your timing. They're the two bits of gold dust, because especially when the athlete is probably in their adolescent years, it's quite difficult for them to process what you're saying as well. And what you can create is a bit of, oh, here we go again. And it's, like a parent and a child, here we go again, chat. And nothing's going in. But as a coach, you're talking. And then it's like, well, why haven't you achieved this? Why haven't you improved that? Why haven't you? And the bit of advice was, just sometimes say nothing. Sometimes wait for the athlete to speak to you and actually come to you. And that doesn't mean just do it like that, because that could cause the athlete to be, oh, hang on, he normally don't shut up. And now all of a sudden he's not speaking. Have I done something wrong? It's making sure that you get the balance right. But just giving that moment for the athlete to come to you. I know that's your role to give feedback, but you don't always need to give feedback. The athlete is more of an expert than we know. Yeah, if you've done the right basics, the right foundations, the fundamentals, essentials, people know that, people that have worked with me and have spent a bit of time with me, they know how important the foundations of gymnastics is. And yes, you've got a lot of work to do there, but if you've got that right, you hardly need to speak. The athlete has then got the tools, and if you give them the tools to do the job and the encouragement, the guidance, the leadership, you've done 90% of the work. Then all you've got to do is spin those plates little by little. And half the time you find yourself not really saying anything, and the athlete can come to you and ask you a question. Then you can give the feedback that you need to give, and they're all ears.
I agree there. And how did you find yourself doing that transformation then? Because obviously, like, you then have to put that into your practice. Did you find it quite a challenge at first to hold back and not talk? Because I think sometimes with a lot of this stuff, when I talk to students or when I talk to coaches, it's that, okay, so how do I make that change? How do I start to put in that new process? Because one is difficult, it can be weird for the performers, but it's also for the coach, for the person who talks a lot, like me, to get them to say less can be challenging. How did you find it?
No, it was a challenge, and it was actually hard work, and I found myself getting very tired at the end of a session for not saying as much, because I was actually really trying hard not to actually, or basically to just stay and wait for them to come to me. And then over time, it becomes a lot more natural. And now I find it quite strange if I'm giving loads of feedback. So it has changed, but it does take work. And of course, part of that process is, again, the self-reflection.
No, and that's a fantastic point to sort of leave that on. I think we could carry on this for a while, but it's great to hear some of your insights on that the process of reflection and self-development there, Scott. Awesome stuff. But we now have a couple of questions in the chat, which, if you don't mind, I'm just going to punt them at you and see how you get on.
That's cool.
You did say you were happy to talk about 95% of stuff, so we'll leave that 5%. But if you don't like the question, bat it off. We're going to go up to the top here. So a couple of bits straight from Aled. What's the biggest challenge in your coaching to date, and how did you overcome it? I
think my biggest challenge was me, if I'm honest. I know people that know me, they probably see me as quite a confident person, quite a outspoken, forward-thinking, confrontational at times, not afraid to make my stance, but it's something that I've actually really had to work on from probably about 14, 15 years old. And I probably started changing, my first changes were probably quite negative, because I started becoming quite, like I said, I'd cover up my insecurities with an ego, and I actually found who I was through coaching. I built my confidence through coaching. But as a youngster, I wasn't actually that confident. And of course, as you go through your career and there's more pressures and more stress and more everything else, people don't know, but those anxieties are still there. And it's actually trying to manage those and not taking them home. So that's my biggest battle. When I'm in the gym and I'm in the zone and I'm doing what I do, that's not a big challenge. I didn't used to like talking to the parents that had poor opinions of me or the gymnasts or the club. Now I would say that's a really big enjoyment of mine. I love working with people, especially people that have got problems or need help or have got an issue, because I like to try and help resolve those things, and I think there's a resolution in everything. So I actually look forward to those. So I'd say that's gone now, but really the biggest challenge is myself and getting the balance right for life. And I do feel like I'm getting there now. It is a bit easier because the guys are adults and I've got a great coaching team with me, so it's a bit easier. But yeah, that's probably my time management and managing my own sort of, demons, if you like, that try and, talk me out of a decision that I might be making, if that makes sense.
I can imagine your own worst critic then.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Well, I'm glad that you've come to face that and you've got better at it, my friend. Next question we've got. What one piece of advice would you give to a coach aspiring to coach high performance gymnastics / sport?
Right. Okay. So first of all, there's no point if you don't absolutely love it. You've got to love what you're doing. You've got to have a passion for it. There's absolutely no point in trying to even attempt high performance if you think, yeah, I'll do that as a job. If you want to be involved in high performance as a support staff, as a physio, as a sports science, something like that, yeah, great, because you can do it as a job. Do you know what I mean? You can do it and you could actually have a massively positive impact on a sort of an athlete's setup. No question there at all. But you're probably quite passionate about the subject that you're learning, so you're probably quite passionate. Although you might not be a passionate sports coach, you're passionate about your physio. Therefore, you're a very good physio. But if you want to be an elite sports coach, you've got to be passionate about what you want to do. Of course, the second bit of advice is self-reflection. I've said it enough times now. If you haven't got the ability to do that, you're never going to learn. You're never going to sort of reflect on the mistakes, but also the positives. And of course, the third one, and we've touched on this as well, but I can't emphasize this enough, is continuous learning. Find yourself a mentor. I believe that all coaches, athletes, anybody like businessmen, they should all have mentors. And I never categorized that before. I never put a name to it. But looking back, I realized that I've got several mentors that I've actually hung on to throughout my whole career. Jeff being one of them, of course. Mark, you know, you learn a lot of that from those. It doesn't necessarily have to be technical knowledge. It's just having someone to talk to. You know, even if you know the answers yourself, having someone that you can just run those through and, you know, help you with those answers, but also, like I said, educating yourself. They're my sort of main 3 bits of advice. There's lots of little bits that I can go into as well. But if you haven't got that passion and the ability to continuously learn and, of course, reflect, you know, you've got a question, is elite coaching for you?
Yeah, again, there's a lot of little nuggets in there, Scott. I'm going to dive into this mentoring bit, because we did our last session where we had a couple of the staff from the uni that I'm at talk about mentoring, and the fact that, you know, there's a lot of research that's really unpicking up. We don't really know what it is or how it's structured or the best way of doing it. But if you had to sort of say what's your process, or how do you go about doing this? I know Polly's written a question: how much training, mentoring do you do with your coaching team? So do you take that on board, or do you allocate people to work with different people? How do you do that?
Both. In terms of general mentoring, then guidance, management, leadership, I take that role. I take it very seriously. In terms of specific mentoring, I do a lot with 1 or 2 coaches, but not too broad, because I've got my jobs to do as well, and I still have to think about what I've got to do. And I think, you know, being there to answer questions, to support, to advise is just as important, if not more important, than being there to say, oh, you know, maybe you should think about this technique, because a coach will find a way around the technique. They'll find a way around what they need to do to get to the end result. But the way they're talking might not. They might, you know, a lot of coaches have a negative impact, and you can look at them and think, oh, why are they doing that? But that coach isn't being horrible or purposely trying to create a negative atmosphere. They're just unaware what they're doing, and they may have had experiences or influences in their life as athletes themselves or as a coach with other coaches doing that. So it's learnt behavior as well, and they're unaware. And it's being able to have that conversation and develop that so that there's a little bit of awareness, because your language is, I mean, you can say 2 things in exactly the same sentence, but just in a slightly different way, and have 2 completely different impacts. And that takes a lot of work to get that right. And I don't know if anyone's read the chimp paradox, so you understand that the chimp and the human, and, you know, quite often your human is taking over, especially in gymnastics, because there's so much emotion involved. You can't help it. You build an emotional attachment to your athletes. You build an emotional attachment to your team mates, your work staff, whether it's a positive one or negative. There's so much emotion, and you've got to be so careful not to act on emotion. You've got to take your time to act with your human, if you like, not your chimp. Again, I've gone completely off piece there with my answer, but it's you know, important to be able to give the right language and the right feedback.
Yeah, and it's cool to hear from your perspective. So I won't ask who they are, but how many people do you go to? Because I know what you're talking about in terms of, sometimes it's just a bit of a sounding board. You've got the ideas in your head. You just want to bounce them off someone to make sure that, yeah, they're getting the nod, which you already knew you were going to get from them. But how many do you sort of float around? And obviously, Jeff, Davis, the man, the legend, obviously he's one of them. But do you have like others for specific roles or for specific aspects?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's mainly my performance head coaches that I really work with, some of the assistants as well. Obviously, I work a lot with Anthony Wise, who's one of my up and coming coaches. And ironically, I hardly do any sort of technical teaching with him because he's the oracle of gymnastics as far as he's concerned. But I do a lot of work on the human aspects of it, of the emotional intelligence. He's highly intellectual, but he misses certain things and certain aspects that I've got quite a high empathy, and I can pick things up quite easy, whereas my natural intellect, if you like, isn't great. Whereas he's almost the opposite. So I try to fill in those gaps. So when I can see an athlete standing there like that, and he's just going and going and going, it's like, right, we need to think of a different way, a different approach. Also giving him a lot of sort of life advice and support as well. And then obviously everyone's different. So with Ross, the head women's coach, he's a high performance coach. He's a great coach as well. But he's a real thinker. He likes very regimented approach. He likes to think things through. Sometimes he misses that. Let's go. Let's get it done. Don't worry about it. Just go. So it's trying to invite. But of course, I wouldn't say what I say to him to Anthony. So it's having a different approach. But then I encourage them to do the same with their coaches. Their coaches do the same with their coaches. So it's a bit of an umbrella effect. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I've got some key staff. So Jeff is now on the board of trustees. So actually, he's still a mentor of mine. He still works with some of the other coaches. But in the gym, I've got some senior coaches that it's like, well, your role is to mentor these younger coaches. But again, it's all about how to teach, how to communicate, what language to use, the impacts you can have, rather than the technical aspects. Because I feel like, especially in this country, in Great Britain, there's so much knowledge now. It's not hard to find, but it doesn't matter how much knowledge you've got if you don't know how to apply it.
Oh, I agree. And I think that's maybe one thing that we undersell is like coaching isn't just about technique. It's about that social interaction. It's people working with people. And if you don't know how to interact with individuals, it makes you've probably lost the battle before you've even started. I've definitely read, I read one research article the other day, which was about sports biomechanists working with coaches. And it said coaches need to up their knowledge in terms of in terms of biomechanics. But then the other way around, it said sports biomechanists need to work on their communication skills because they couldn't talk to coaches. And that's just that bit, as you said there. Sometimes that missing link is that interaction, the discussion, the talking part, which sometimes can be hard to teach. Awesome. Beautiful comment. So I've got a couple more questions then, Scott. Next question. I should have been prepared. I was lost in your conversation there. Here we've got a question here. Lockdown. Obviously, so I know you said that obviously you're from the business side. You're still doing stuff with that because obviously a lot of your members aren't there. But with your guys that you've been working with, how did you manage them in the lockdown in terms of the motivations and whatnot? Did it differ, and how did you have to maybe work with the different individuals to make sure that they still had that sense of we will get through this? It will be at some point, but how did you manage that for different individuals?
It's quite simple. Using the team, using each other, bringing people together. Obviously, technology, being on a Zoom call now and seeing everybody here in the same room, it was really, really good. And we didn't overkill, so we didn't do it all the time. Probably 3 times a week, we all got together, and we just did a workout. Not gymnastics, because they're at such a level. I don't need to think about handstand conditioning and everything else. What we're allowed to do on Zoom? Star shape, half cartwheel. I can't remember what it is. There's no point in doing that. So it's all about proper leg circuit, just talking, just being a group of people and just talking and interacting. And Max was particularly good and saying you could actually use this time to your advantage. What could you better yourself in right now whilst we've got no access to the gyms? And that was a real good point, and some of the guys actually went and started doing a bit of an online. I think Bryn did a strength and condition. I don't know what's it called? What's it called? A personal trainer course. He's
PT.
level 1 and level 2, I think, and done a few bits and pieces that he finished off during the lockdown. A couple of the other guys actually just went and thought, I need to improve my fitness. So during this time, I'm going to run, I'm going to do bike rides, I'm going to do everything I could. And every single person at some point hit a low. Every single person. But they weren't on their own, and I think that's the key part. We was there as a team. And even now, yes, we're allowed to be in the gym, but every now and again they'll jump on another Zoom call with some of the guys that can't be in the gym. They'll just try and motivate them a little bit, and just using everything you possibly can. But also being aware of you as a person as well, because if you're feeling low, you've got to try and not hide that, but not come onto your sessions and be quite demotivated, because that could potentially demotivate them as well.
Yeah, agree. I know we said beforehand who supports the supporter. So if you are the motivator and you're in that sort of position, it can be quite challenging. How did you keep yourself ticking over then, in terms of when we weren't allowed to be anywhere near the gym? What kept you going, and how allowed you to motivate the group you work with?
Well, I don't know if anyone saw my my Instagram feed or whatever you call it. You probably saw I had a couple of silly videos where I've made a music video with some of the other coaches, and I did a lot of little tiny clinics with my daughter. That's how I met working with parents in sport. Actually, he thought that I was her coach, and that was the introduction. So I did that, and then I did a little bit of studying, but my own study. It wasn't an official course. It was just going on the internet and researching certain things that I'm interested in, and doing my own fitness. I was adamant that I was going to stay fit, because obviously, if you think healthy body, healthy mind as a basic principle in your life, you can normally get through. And at times where I was really low, I'd go on a run. Sometimes I'd run in for bloody miles, and then I started challenging myself, setting myself little targets. So I think I did the fastest I did 5K was 23 minutes. It's probably not very fast to some of you, but for me, I was really impressed with that, and I was nearly sick.
Pushing yourself, love it. And no, that's some great tips there, because I know probably a lot of people in this chat are still, well, we're back into our lockdown again, and we're cracking on. So it's that the note there is look after yourself, and then do your best to work with the group you've got. I've got a couple more questions I'm going to chuck at you, Scott. One here was, what advice do you have for talented gymnasts who find it hard to cope under pressure?
So there's two things. I think as part of your training, you must be able to create pressurized environments. Obviously you might take them out and do controlled events. So a little trick that I used to have, I don't do it now, but I used to randomly bring all the parents, whoever was in the waiting area, I'd go and bring them all in the gym. And I'd say, right, guys, can you come in? I just want you to watch these routines. You could see the kids' faces drop. And you could start to see that some of them would deal with the pressure, some of them would rise. A lot of psychology, and I don't mean going and finding a psychologist. I mean doing that yourself. You can talk to a psychologist, because at the end of the day, you're the one delivering those messages as the coach. You're the consistent person. You're the consistent party. So you need to have those tools. And actually, I've figured out that I'm probably 90% a psychologist. I didn't even realize it. So again, that goes back to the responsibility of making sure what your messages are positive and useful, because you can say the wrong thing. So if you are struggling with that, work with a psychologist yourself, get them to help you with the tools and give you the feedback and the guidance, and then you can start delivering that. And of course, you then not only help that one athlete, you're starting to help all of the other athletes as well. So that's key, but also understanding. All right, and this is really important. You've got to understand that some people will just not be able to deal with the pressure as well as some other people. And talent doesn't exist in just a physical form. Okay, I've seen some of the most amazing competitors on the world stage. I mean, I'll give you some examples. Christian Thomas is physically talented. Who would say that he was going to be a gymnast? But his ability to perform, his calm approach, his no stress. You can't train that. You can enhance it. You can enhance it, and you can enhance the stress as well if you get it wrong, right? So you can enhance whatever that natural ability is, but ultimately we have to understand that you can't create it. You can't create that. And if someone is already stressing, just be aware. Don't give up, but just be aware that that may not change. However, the other thing to remember is quite often when someone hits puberty and it all changes, and the person that might have been very anxious all of a sudden becomes the most amazing competitor, and vice versa. The person that was able to deal with pressure could become very anxious. And they're things that the only thing that you've got in your toolbox as a coach is encouragement, is motivation, is inspiration, and better educating yourself to be able to give those key messages to help the athlete.
Awesome. And as you said there, I know like one of our other chats, we spoke about helping or developing performers to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I say our job is to come up with those situations, obviously involve them in the process so they know what's coming. Don't just chuck them under the bus, but trying to develop them and prepare them for those moments. And then hopefully they'll be okay and they can develop tools to get around that as well. Awesome. Scott, I know we're coming up to 9, so I'll leave it with the last couple of questions. Question to you. What would be, if you could go back and tell, what would be your golden nugget, 2 bits of info that you would give to an up-and-coming coach? So if you could go back and tell yourself 2 things back to a younger Scott, what would it be and why?
Like I said, taking a bit more time for myself, making sure that I'm reflecting and not trying to give answers instantly, taking a bit more time. Taking the time to actually understand that failures aren't always failures. In fact, 99% of the time, they are the golden moments of when you learn and when you're able to better yourself. Allowing yourself to what's the word, to don't fail on purpose, but allowing yourself to go through that process if it does happen, and accepting that it might be very uncomfortable for a period of time, but at the end of it you will only be stronger if you're able to reflect properly. But ultimately, no one ever moved forward inside their own comfort zone. Take yourself outside your comfort zone, challenge yourself, and make sure that you're continuously learning and continuously developing yourself to be the best version of you that you can possibly be.
Beautiful. Thank you, Scott. And I know we talk about a lot of there's research that talks about that zone of proximal development. Like, as you said there, if you stay in your comfort zone, nothing fun ever happens in there. But going outside there a little bit, working with someone else who knows this stuff a little bit just to help you and assist you, then there's the opportunity for a lot of fantastic learning there. One thing I'll link into that then is, what has been one moment that you felt, oh crap, that was a massive fail, but you learned the most from it?
Well, I can tell you the biggest learning, I mean, this isn't as a person, this is as a coach, right, was at the 2014 World Championships in China, where I put a ridiculous amount of pressure onto Max without even realizing it. I was out there, the time difference was so poor for talking to family at home, a million of miles away from anybody. The environment was horrible. The culture wasn't very nice. I've probably pissed a few people off, but sorry about the language, by saying, oh, Max is going to be amazing and he's going to do this. And they're like, just, focus a little bit on the team. And all of a sudden I was put under pressure to be part of the team. And then it all going wrong, and it just being the most uncomfortable situation. I was embarrassed, not at Max's mistakes, that I'd never be embarrassed of anyone's mistakes, but of how I would built him up to. I was even saying things in news, talking to news reporters, saying things like, I think he could challenge Uchimura. I think, we could look at a real prospect to having a world champion. and all of these things, and just being so uncomfortable and just thinking, what, the world's ended. I just need to get. I've got 2 weeks out here where I can't think. But then looking back, it was perfect. It couldn't have been written better. 2014, 2 years from the Olympics, a major learning opportunity. Take yourself in, make yourself very uncomfortable. Force myself to make all those learning and those small changes. There's so many things that I would never do now based on that one experience. I've got a lot of advice to give based on that one experience. So for me, that one championship and the build up before it was probably my key learning, or one of the biggest failures, if you like, but key learning parts of my journey.
Awesome. And as we like to finish on, I see learning from failure is fantastic. What's been one massive positive? So if you had to pick one epic highlight from your journey thus far, what would it be and why? And then we'll use that to sort of finish off and put a capstone on this talk.
Well, for me, it's one thing, and there's nothing that can beat it, and that's getting the relationships with your athletes A1, getting it right. I've been, I'm now uncle, I'm now brother-in-law. I've had a bloody Father's Day card from Brim when he lost his dad, and it was like, thank you. It wasn't to dad, it wasn't like that, but it was just thank you for being there. I'm now best man for his stag. And they're all still athletes, they're training. You've got to be aware of those relationships, because when they're young, it needs to be very distant. But as you get older, and I've got gymnasts, Danny Lawrence, of course, you guys, I still stay in contact with them. And there's not one person that I haven't spent the last 15, 20 years with that I now no longer speak to. They're all key parts of my life. And if you get this journey right, it's the experiences you have, it's the people you meet, and it's the lessons you learn that will stay with you forever, not a gold medal. And that's a promise. Yeah. Take every moment as if you're not enjoying every moment, even the bad moments, even the ones where you're making the mistakes or having the argument or having the conflict, if you're not enjoying every single minute of it all, it's not worth it.
And on that beautiful bombshell, social interaction is key. Get that right, and you could be best man at someone's wedding. Sounds like a fantastic note to finish on there. So, Scott, I just want to say thank you very much, Scott. I know it's Sunday night. You're up early to be back in the gym, and you could be doing anything else. So, just want to say thank you very much for giving us your hour. So, thank you very much, my friend.
My pleasure. Complete pleasure's all mine, and it's been lovely seeing so many faces, especially you, Bonnie. You look fantastic. And
don't butter up too much. No, we had 48 people joining us on this chat this evening, Scott. So 48 people were keen to listen and ask a lot of questions to get some of your experience. And I will be dragging you back on for another chat at some point. But I just want to say thank you very much for your time. And we will stop there, press end on the record, and we'll put this onto the little YouTube channel afterwards. But thank you very much.